In 1933, a Kansas farmer with 4 children paid 0 federal income tax, not because he cheated, because he understood money in ways the modern tax code was designed to make you forget. His grandchildren are still using 3 of the habits on this list. Number 14 is technically legal, but so effective, the IRS changed reporting rules twice to discourage it. Number 7 was taught in public schools across 38 states until the banking lobby quietly had it removed in 1971. And number 2, the one that built more family wealth during the worst economic collapse in American history than any government program, is something Wall Street prays your children never learn. These 20 habits were not about clipping coupons. They were about building a system the tax man could not touch. Before we start, hit subscribe. Let us count down. Number 20, the envelope system. Before bank accounts became the default, Depression-era families managed every dollar with physical envelopes. A father would cash his weekly paycheck, bring home the bills, and sit at the kitchen table with his wife dividing the cash into labeled envelopes: rent, groceries, coal, church tithe, doctor fund. The system was brutal in its honesty. When the grocery envelope was empty on Thursday, the family ate what was already in the pantry. There was no overdraft fee, no credit card minimum payment, no interest compounding at 24% while you slept. The average American household in 1935 had no consumer debt whatsoever, 0. Today, the average household carries over $10,000 in credit card debt alone, and banks collect roughly $120 billion a year in interest from that debt. The envelope system made overspending physically impossible. You could not spend what you could not hold in your hand. Financial advisors now sell digital versions of this exact system for $12 a month. Your great-grandmother did it with paper envelopes she saved from the mailman. The method has not improved, only the price of learning it has. Banks do not want you using envelopes. They want you swiping a card, because every swipe generates data and fees that envelopes never did. Number 19, paying cash for everything. Depression era. Families bought nothing on credit except a house. Many refused even that. If you could not pay for it with money you already had, you did not buy it. A washing machine cost $60 in 1937. A family saved for 18 months and paid cash. No finance charge, no installment plan, no lien on the appliance that let a creditor walk into your home and repossess it. Here is what the credit industry does not advertise. A family that finances a $400 appliance at 18% interest over 2 years pays $478. That extra $78 is pure profit for the lender. Multiply that across every purchase a modern family finances: the car, the furniture, the phone, the mattress, and the average household transfers tens of thousands of dollars to creditors over a lifetime. Depression-era families kept that money. They bought less, but they owned everything outright. IRS cannot tax wealth that never shows up as reportable income. Cash savings sitting in a coffee can do not generate a 1099. Number 18, growing and preserving food. A family garden in 1934 was not a hobby, it was infrastructure. Families across the Midwest and the South grew tomatoes, green beans, corn, squash, potatoes, and onions on plots no bigger than a modern 2-car garage. Then they canned it. By late September, the cellar shelves were lined with 200 to 400 mason jars of preserved vegetables, fruits, jams, and pickled goods. The whole operation cost almost nothing beyond seeds and lids. A packet of tomato seeds was about 5 cents. A bushel of homegrown tomatoes replaced $3 worth of canned goods from the store. Multiply that across an entire growing season, and the savings were enormous. None of it was taxable. No sales tax on food you grew yourself, no income to report, no transaction for anyone to track. The value created went straight into the family's mouths without passing through a single commercial exchange. The modern equivalent would be earning an extra $2,000 to $4,000 a year in untaxed grocery savings. But gardening requires knowledge that skips generations when nobody teaches it. That knowledge is exactly what vanished. In small towns from Appalachia to the Great Plains, cash was so scarce during the Depression that entire local economies ran on trade. A carpenter fixed a neighbor's porch in exchange for a side of pork. A seamstress hemmed dresses for the doctor's wife, and the family's medical bills disappeared. A farmer traded eggs for haircuts every Saturday for 5 years. None of this generated a receipt. None of it passed through a bank. And here is the part that matters. When money does not change hands, the IRS has no mechanism to track the transaction. Technically, bartered value is supposed to be reported as income. The IRS issued guidance on this, but enforcement during the Depression was effectively non-existent, and the habit persisted in rural communities well into the 1960s. Entire towns functioned on handshake economies where wealth circulated without ever creating a taxable event. The government could not take a percentage of a bushel of corn traded for a new front door. That was the point. Number 16, buying in bulk when prices dropped. Depression-era families did not panic buy. They bought strategically. When flour dropped to 3 cents a pound, a family would buy 100 pounds. When sugar hit its annual low before harvest season, they bought a year's supply. They watched prices the way a stock trader watches the market, waiting for the exact moment to move. Storage was the investment. A root cellar, a cool pantry, a dry basement, these were the family's warehouse. Buying 50 pounds of dried navy beans at 4 cents a pound instead of buying 1 pound at a time for 8 cents each saved real money over 12 months. The savings compounded invisibly. No financial institution profited from the transaction. No interest was earned or owed. No tax was triggered. The family simply ate for less and kept the difference. This is the habit grocery stores fought hardest against because it breaks the model of frequent small purchases that drive impulse buying and brand loyalty. Number 15, repairing instead of replacing. A man in Depression-era America did not throw away a pair of boots when the sole wore through. He resoled them. A woman did not discard a dress when the seam ripped. She mended it. Children's clothes were patched, handed down, altered, and patched again until the fabric itself could no longer hold thread. A pair of men's work boots cost about $3 in 1935. A half sole and new heel from the cobbler cost 50 cents. That is an 83% savings on a single item. Across a household, across a year, across a decade, the math becomes staggering. The modern replacement economy is designed to make repair feel like a waste of time. Manufacturers use proprietary screws, glued components, and planned obsolescence specifically to push consumers toward buying new. Every new purchase generates sales tax for the state and profit for a corporation. Every repair generates nothing for anyone except the family that keeps its money. Depression families understood this instinctively. They were not being frugal. They were being strategic. First pattern break. Here is where this gets uncomfortable for certain institutions. The habits on this list share one common thread. They reduce the number of commercial transactions a family engages in. Every time you grow food instead of buying it, mend a coat instead of replacing it, trade labor instead of paying cash, you remove a taxable event from the economy. The IRS collects revenue from transactions, sales tax, income tax, capital gains, payroll withholding. All of it depends on money moving through systems the government can monitor. Depression-era families, by necessity, built lives that minimized those movements. They were not evading taxes. They were simply living in ways that generated fewer taxable moments. The result was the same. More wealth stayed in the family. The modern financial system, from credit cards to subscription services to autopay, is engineered to create as many transactions as possible. Every swipe is a data point. Every data point is a potential tax event. Your great-grandparents lived on the other side of that equation, and they did just fine. Depression-era families learned something that estate lawyers charge $500 an hour to explain. Tangible assets passed between generations differently than cash. A grandfather could give his grandson a set of woodworking tools. a chest freezer full of venison, or a used truck without triggering a gift tax, because the IRS had neither the mechanism nor the interest to assess the fair market value of a used handsaw. The gift tax exemption in the 1930s was $50,000 over a lifetime, a fortune that almost no working-class family approached. But the habit persisted long after the law changed because the principle was sound. Wealth transferred as physical goods, knowledge, and labor skills was functionally invisible to the tax system. A father who taught his son to wire a house gave him a skill worth $15,000 at zero taxable cost. A grandmother who taught her granddaughter to preserve food gave her a lifetime of grocery savings the IRS would never see. The most valuable inheritance in Depression-era families was not money, it was capability. You cannot tax what someone knows how to do. Number 13, avoiding installment plans. By 1929, more than 60% of cars, furniture, and major appliances in America were purchased on installment plans. When the crash hit and banks called in debts, families who had bought on credit lost everything. Those who had saved and paid cash kept their possessions. The lesson burned itself into an entire generation. Depression survivors refused installment plans for the rest of their lives. Their children heard the same lecture at every kitchen table. If you cannot afford it today, you cannot afford it. This was not stubbornness, it was mathematics. An installment plan on a $200 Sears refrigerator at 12% over 2 years cost $228 total. The finance company kept $28 for doing nothing except waiting. Across a lifetime of purchases, a family that avoided all installment buying could save the equivalent of a year's income. That accumulated capital was not reportable, not taxable. It simply existed as more money in the family's hands and less in the hands of the lender. Every credit product sold today is a descendant of those installment plans. The language changed. The math did not. Number 12, keeping a household ledger. Every dollar that entered a Depression household was recorded. Every dollar that left was accounted for. Mothers kept small, ruled notebooks on the kitchen counter, and wrote down every expenditure. Flour, 3 cents. Milk, 8 cents. Coal, 45 cents. At the end of each week, the numbers were totaled. If spending exceeded the budget, the family knew exactly where the overage occurred and corrected it the following week. This was not accounting. This was self-defense. A family that tracked every cent could identify waste with surgical precision. The modern equivalent is a budgeting app, except the app costs $9.99 a month, sells your spending data to advertisers, and is designed to keep you engaged rather than informed. A 5-cent notebook did the same job with no monthly fee, no data harvesting, and no push notifications trying to sell you something. The IRS does not care about your ledger, but the habits it builds, awareness of cash flow, resistance to impulse spending, and precise knowledge of where money goes, create a financial discipline that compounds across decades. Families who kept ledgers during the Depression built wealth not through higher income, but through lower leakage. Number 11, teaching children to work early. Depression-era children were not sheltered from the economics of the household. By age 7 or 8, they had jobs, real ones, feeding chickens, weeding the garden, carrying firewood, and collecting eggs to sell to neighbors. A boy of 10 might earn 15 cents sweeping the front steps of the general store. A girl of 12 might earn a quarter mending clothes for elderly neighbors. That money went into the family economy or into the child's own savings, often a glass jar kept on a shelf. The lessons embedded were permanent. A child who earned money through labor at age 8 understood the relationship between effort and reward in a way that no classroom lecture could replicate. They understood that a nickel meant 30 minutes of sweeping, that a quarter meant an afternoon of hard work, and that a dollar was not something that appeared. It was something that was earned. These children grew into adults who negotiated harder, saved more, and spent less. The financial literacy was experiential, not theoretical. Modern childhood is structured to delay economic participation as long as possible. Children receive money as allowance, disconnected from labor. The result is predictable, a generation that reaches adulthood without understanding what money actually costs in human effort. Number 10. Living below your means on purpose. This was not accidental. Depression-era families who recovered economically, who found steady work by the late 1930s, who saw wages rise through the war years, did not increase their spending to match. They kept living as if the money might disappear tomorrow. A man making $40 a week in 1942 continued to live on $25 because he remembered what $0 felt like. That gap between earning and spending was the most powerful wealth-building tool available to ordinary Americans, and it required no financial advisor, no investment account, no special tax shelter. It was simply the discipline of remembering. The money that accumulated in savings accounts, coffee cans, and envelopes tucked behind the dresser mirror became down payments on houses, startup capital for small businesses, and college tuition for children who would be the first in their families to attend. None of it came from clever investments. All of it came from the habit of spending less than what came in, a habit so effective that the consumer economy had to spend billions of dollars in advertising to break it. Second pattern, break. Here is what financial institutions understood by the 1950s. The Depression generation was bad for business. People who saved instead of spending, who repaired instead of replacing, who grew food instead of buying it, who avoided credit and paid cash were not profitable customers. They did not carry balances. They did not pay interest. They did not generate the transaction volume that banks and retailers depended on. So the economy was redesigned around their children. Post-war advertising targeted the baby boomers with a single message. You deserve better than your parents had. Spend now. Enjoy now. Finance it. You can afford the payments. The entire consumer credit infrastructure, credit cards, auto loans, store financing, adjustable rate mortgages was built to undo the habits that the Depression generation had drilled into their families. It worked. Consumer debt in America went from virtually zero in 1945 to over $1 trillion by the year 2000. The system needed people to forget what their grandparents knew, and most of them did. Number 9. Buying used as the default. New was not the standard in Depression-era households. Used was. Furniture came from estate sales. Clothing came from older cousins. Tools came from neighbors who had upgraded. A kitchen table that cost $15 new at Sears cost $2 at a farm auction. The savings were not marginal. They were transformational. A family that furnished an entire house secondhand might spend $30 compared to $300 for new. That $270 difference was a month's rent. It was 3 months of groceries. It was the margin between survival and disaster. Buying used also created no sales tax in most states during this era. No credit transaction, no finance charge. Cash changed hands directly between individuals, bypassing every intermediary that normally takes a cut. The modern thrift economy, vintage shops, and online resale charge a premium for what Depression families did out of necessity. The principle remains the same. Every dollar not spent on the new product markup is a dollar that stays in the family. Number 8. Multi-purpose use of every item. Nothing in a Depression-era household served only one function. Flour sacks became dresses, curtains, and dish towels. Manufacturers eventually started printing the sacks with floral patterns because they knew families were using the fabric. Bacon grease was cooking oil, leather conditioner, and lamp fuel. Newspaper was insulation, wrapping paper, and kindling. A single bar of lye soap washed dishes, laundry, floors, and faces. This philosophy of maximum utility from minimum purchase was a direct assault on the consumer model that depends on specialized products. Modern kitchens contain an average of 35 different cleaning products. A Depression-era kitchen had 3. The savings were not just financial, they were cognitive. Fewer products meant fewer decisions, fewer shopping trips, fewer opportunities for impulse buying. Every specialized product you buy is a problem that your great-grandmother solved with something she already owned. She did not need a marketing team to tell her what she needed. She already knew. Number 7. Teaching financial literacy at the kitchen table. In the 1930s, public schools in 38 states included household economics in their standard curriculum. Children learned to balance a household budget, calculate interest rates, and understand the true cost of credit. By the early 1970s, those programs had been gutted. The banking lobby pushed for their removal, arguing that financial education should come from financial professionals, not teachers. What replaced them was nothing. Financial literacy rates among American high school graduates have declined every decade since. Depression-era parents did not wait for the school system. They taught money at the dinner table. Children watched their parents count bills, divide envelopes, negotiate with vendors, and make hard choices about what the family could and could not afford. They learned that a dollar earned was not a dollar kept, that taxes and fees and interest reduced every paycheck before it reached the table. This education was free, effective, and threatening to every institution that profits from financial ignorance. A population that understands compound interest does not carry credit card debt and does not need to be told this twice. Even families in small towns kept chickens, rabbits, or a goat during the Depression. A backyard flock of 6 hens produced roughly 3 dozen eggs a week, enough to feed the family and trade with neighbors. Rabbits bred quickly and provided lean protein at almost no cost. A dairy goat gave a quart or 2 of milk daily. Feed costs were minimal because the animals ate kitchen scraps, garden waste, and foraged greens. The eggs, meat, and milk these animals produced never passed through a cash register. No sales tax, no income generated, no transaction recorded anywhere. The value was real but invisible to the formal economy. Zoning laws in most American cities now prohibit backyard livestock. The regulations were sold as public health measures, but the effect was to force families back into the commercial food supply chain, where every calorie they consume generates revenue for someone else. Depression families who kept animals were not homesteaders. They were ordinary people who understood that controlling your food supply meant controlling your expenses. Number 5, avoiding banks when possible. The bank failures of the early 1930s destroyed trust in financial institutions for an entire generation. When over 9,000 banks failed between 1930 and 1933, families who had trusted the system lost everything. The lesson was clear and permanent. Do not put all your money where someone else controls it. Depression survivors kept cash in multiple locations, some in the bank if they used one at all, some at home, some with trusted family members. They diversified not their investments, but their storage. Money spread across physical locations could not all be lost at once. The modern banking system offers FDIC insurance, which eliminated the risk of total loss. But the Depression-era instinct toward self-reliance with money persists in families that remember. A household with cash reserves outside the banking system has options that a household entirely dependent on electronic accounts does not. When systems fail, when power goes out, when accounts freeze, cash in hand is the only currency that works immediately without permission from anyone. Third pattern break. The IRS has spent nearly a century building systems to track how money moves. These include Social Security numbers, employer withholding, 1099 forms for independent income, and bank reporting requirements for deposits over $10,000. Every decade brings new mechanisms to ensure that no dollar changes hands without the government knowing about it. Depression-era families lived before most of these systems existed. Their habits, including bartering, cash transactions, home production, and direct person-to-person exchanges, were practiced in a world where privacy was the default. The modern economy has inverted that. Visibility is the default. Every purchase on a debit card, every direct deposit, every Venmo transfer creates a record. The habits on this list are not about hiding income, they are about building a life that requires fewer financial transactions in the first place. The fewer times money moves through monitored channels, the more of it stays where you earned it. That is not tax evasion, it is the architecture of self-sufficiency. Number 4, saving before spending was a non-negotiable rule. In the Depression household, savings was not what was left over after expenses. Savings was the first expense. The moment cash entered the house, a portion went into the savings envelope, the jar, the tin can behind the stove. 10% was the common target, though some families saved more when times allowed. This was treated with the same urgency as the rent payment. You did not skip it. You did not borrow from it. It was sacred. The modern financial system inverts this entirely. Income arrives. Bills are auto-paid. Subscriptions are deducted. Discretionary spending happens. Whatever survives, if anything, becomes savings. The average American savings rate hovered near 3% before the pandemic. Depression families maintained effective rates of 15 to 25%, even on tiny incomes, because savings was a non-negotiable first action rather than an afterthought. The cumulative difference over a working lifetime is staggering. A family saving 20% of a modest income for 40 years accumulates wealth that looks like luck to outsiders, but was actually just discipline applied consistently. Number 3. Cooking from scratch as a financial strategy. This was not about Pinterest recipes or culinary ambition. This was mathematics. A loaf of bread from the store cost 9 cents in 1935. A loaf made at home from flour, yeast, salt, and water cost about 2 cents. A family of 5 eating 2 loaves a week saved 14 cents, which sounds like nothing until you multiply it across every meal, every week, every year. A family that cooked entirely from basic ingredients like flour, dried beans, lard, sugar, salt, oats, cornmeal, and whatever the garden produced could feed themselves for roughly a third of what processed and prepared food cost. That 2/3 in savings represented real wealth that accumulated invisibly. No one issued a 1099 for the money you did not spend at the grocery store. No one taxed the value of the bread you baked yourself. The skill of cooking from scratch was a tax-free income generator that produced returns every single day. We traded it for convenience, and the convenience cost us everything the skill once saved. Number 2. Owning land and producing from it. Depression families who owned even a small piece of land, a quarter acre, a half acre, had a survival advantage that no savings account could match. That land grew food. It housed chickens. It provided timber for heating. It produced value every single season without generating a single taxable event beyond the property tax itself. A family on a half acre with a garden, a root cellar, a chicken coop, and a woodlot could reduce their annual cash needs by 40 to 60%. The land was a productive asset that appreciated over time, while simultaneously reducing living expenses. This is the habit that built more generational wealth during the Depression than anything else on this list. Families who held on to land, who refused to sell, even when times were desperate, who passed those parcels to their children, created a foundation that compounded across generations. The children built on it. The grandchildren inherited it. The great-grandchildren are still benefiting from a decision made in 1932 by someone who understood that land is the one asset that feeds you while you own it. Number 1. Building community as a financial system. This is the habit that no institution can replicate and no tax code can reach. Depression-era families survived because they operated as networks, not as isolated households. A neighbor with a tractor plowed your field. You helped him raise his barn. The woman down the road watched your children while you worked. You brought her family a ham at Christmas. Skills, labor, food, childcare, and knowledge circulated through these networks without a single dollar changing hands. The value exchanged was enormous. In modern terms, the baby sitting alone would have been worth thousands per year. The shared labor on construction, farming, and repair would have been worth tens of thousands. None of it was taxable because none of it was monetized. The community itself was the economy. This is what was truly lost when post-war prosperity scattered families to suburbs, replaced neighbors with strangers, and turned every human need into a purchasable service. We monetized community. We turned neighborly help into an app with a 20% service fee. We created Venmo, TaskRabbit, and DoorDash to do what a functioning neighborhood once did for free. The IRS can tax a transaction. It cannot tax a neighbor shoveling your driveway because you shoveled his last week. That is the most powerful financial habit on this list, and it is the one we have lost most completely. Here is my challenge. Teach one of these to your kids this week. Just one. Teach the envelope system, the household ledger, or the habit of saving before spending. Sit them at the kitchen table and show them where the money goes. Then come back and tell me if they learned it faster than you expected. Children are not financially illiterate by nature. They are financially illiterate by design. The system profits from what they do not know. Your great-grandparents understood that. Now you do too. Drop which habit you are teaching first in the comments. I want to know if the envelope system gets more love than the barter economy. These were not just money habits. They were a blueprint for independence that the modern economy was built to erase. Your great-grandparents survived the worst financial collapse in history using nothing but discipline, community, and common sense. The least we can do is remember what they knew.